Greetings growers, my name is Marcus Laub. I am your local food hub coordinator here in the Alberni Valley. And today we're going to talk about planting, the difference between planting seedlings and planting seeds, how to prepare your bed, what kind of amendments are best to be used, and how to have successful plants as we move forward. So for the first thing, when you come out in the spring, you're looking at your garden beds. Everyone's going to have a different idea of what they want their garden design to look like. My beds are 3 feet wide. They are that way because I want to be able to reach into the middle without straining, so I chose that width. So these garden beds here were covered by a tarp over the winter, so I'm lucky to not have to deal with a bunch of weeds at this point. But I still want to loosen up the soil and get my beds ready for the season. A great tool is this. It's a wheel hoe, and it replaces the rototiller because I'm trying to move towards a no-till method out here. And this tool is great because it only goes about this deep into the soil, therefore it's not bringing to the surface all kinds of weeds. And it's a simple tool, and I run it, and I just do a quick pass in the garden in the spring, just like this, just to loosen up the soil a little bit. It's the first step that I do in breaking up the garden so that when I'm going to be seeding, we're not going to be having a lot of rocks covering my seeds, and it also helps cut the tops of weeds off as I move through. So that's my first step in preparing the garden, just loosening the surface soil. Once we've passed through with a hoe, in this case the wheel hoe that I used, we've got the surface of the soil is now loose, which is great. But it's also important to keep the subsurface loose. And to avoid using a rototiller, one of the great tools is a strong garden fork. Another tool is a broad fork, but in this instance, my garden's not that big. I just use a strong fork here. And the technique is just to plunge it into the soil and just bend it back and loosen it a little bit. You're not trying to turn the soil. You want to keep the soil profiles as they are and as they want to be. So I just move through the garden. I just do a couple of these just to loosen it up so that the roots will have an easier chance to go deeper into the soil and find nutrients and water that they wouldn't if there was a hard pan. When you're gardening and you're growing lots of food, you're always taking from the soil. So it's important to give back. One of the key things growing on the West Coast is that we tend to have acidic soil. So we need to amend the soil to bring it up to a pH that is more conducive to healthy growing for a wide variety of plants. Lime is the application that I use. You can apply it either in the fall or the early spring. And it comes in a couple different forms, powder and in pelleted form. So I always put a little bit of that per the measurements that show on the bag. I also add compost into the soil every spring. I put a thin layer over top of it just to keep the health and the organic matter in the soil. And as well, I add a little mixture of NPK into it. So I put in some alfalfa meal, some bone meal, and I have some other items that I use that I pick up at the local garden store that I'll add into the soil. If you're unsure, you can always send away your soil to a lab to find out what your pH is and what sort of minerals and nutrients are maybe lacking or you have an excess of. And it's really important to know that, especially if you're going to grow on a larger scale, because this will help you find out why certain items you're growing aren't turning out the way you wanted them. So once you've applied your compost and your amendments and your lime into the soil, if you need those things, I get out the rake and I blend it all together just on the surface. I try to get it nice and smooth because I know that I'm gonna be planting seeds into here, and the more flat the bed is, the easier it's gonna be for seed germination. So once I've raked my beds, I'm pretty much ready to start planting and spacing out my plants. So based on how big I know these different plants are gonna grow, I space them accordingly and I start setting down all my plants along the bed. I am, however, also gonna be planting direct sown bean seeds. And so I'm going to be marking in my bed using the end of this hoe, the line that they're going to be being planted at. And now I'm ready to plant. So I already prepped my holes here to get ready to plant my basil and my tomato plants. So they're ready to go. When pulling them out, I just usually squeeze around the outside and kind of loosely jostle it to come out. And sometimes you'll see that the roots will be all around the outside being exposed. A good way to encourage them to leave this little pocket, which sometimes they will become root bound, is just to give a little scratch on the outside. It just helps them spread their roots once you planted them. In the case of basil, it's pretty simple. You just put it in the ground, bring the soil around, give a little push down so that it's snug and sitting upright. With tomato though, however, it's a little different because tomato you can actually plant further up and roots will form out of the stem. So I always plant it usually up until the first leaves such as this, and those little fibers that you see on the stem will grow into roots. So that's a little tip for you to know. Some people will also put a little compost or a little bit of amendment right in the hole. That's up to you. I've seen it be useful. I've also tried not doing it and had good results as well. When it comes to sowing, directly sowing seeds, I have beans here. It's pretty simple as well. It shows you on the pack what the spacing is going to be. And so I know that every few inches I can put a bean seed down as such. And when it comes time to cover it up, especially when doing a long row, it's great to have a tool such as a hoe, or a tool like this, a different kind of hoe, and I actually just drag it along and it just covers most of the soil up. And then I'll usually come back over, make sure, pat it down if any of them are showing, and of course, watering it in. Especially for seeds, in the first week, I try to make sure that the soil is always wet. It really encourages germination. So there you have it, planting seedlings and planting seeds and how to get your bed ready for the year.